attack?
Yeah, the first panic attack I ever had, I thought I was gonna die.
At 6, he was Hollywood's most adorable child star. At 34, he's unrecognizable. Jonathan Lipnicki went from the glasses-wearing kid in Jerry Maguire to a ripped martial artist. But that transformation didn't happen overnight. It came after years of cruel bullying, anxiety, and being pushed aside by the same industry that once celebrated him. One producer even looked him in the eye and said, "You used to be cute." That was the moment everything changed. Now, the kid they dismissed is the man they don't mess with. This is the real story of what happened when the fame faded and the fight began. Jonathan Lipnicki never expected to end up in one of the biggest movies of the 90s. In fact, he wasn't even the first choice. Another kid had already been cast as Ray Boyd in Jerry Maguire, and they'd even filmed for 2 weeks before the team changed their minds. That's when Jonathan's journey really began. He had only done a few commercials by then. Acting wasn't even something he chased at first. He just followed his older sister to a small acting school near their home in Agoura Hills, California. At 6 years old, he begged to join too. His mom didn't think he was ready, but the teacher saw something special in him and convinced her to let him try. Soon enough, Jonathan started booking national commercials. His agent worked hard to get him in front of the casting director for Jerry Maguire, and when that finally happened, they were blown away. That same day, he and his mom flew to Arizona to meet the director, Cameron Crowe, and Tom Cruise on set. It was all moving so fast, but Jonathan seemed unfazed. After his first audition, he confidently told his mom, "Job is mine." When he found out another kid got it, he was crushed. But not for long. A few weeks later, he got the call. The role was his, after all. He didn't just play Ray Boyd, he was Ray Boyd. Audiences instantly fell in love with the small, wide-eyed boy who calmly informed Tom Cruise's character that the human head weighs 8 pounds. That line became iconic. It wasn't even in the original script. Some say Jonathan came up with it himself, though years later he admitted he couldn't remember exactly how it ended up in the film. He also joked in interviews that the line wasn't even accurate. The human head actually weighs more like 10 or 11 pounds. Still, fans quote it to him all the time, usually getting it wrong, which always makes him smile. Even more surprising than the line's popularity was the friendship that formed between Jonathan and Tom Cruise. At just 5 years old, Jonathan was already a Top Gun fan, so meeting Cruise in person should have been intimidating. But he wasn't nervous. Looking back, he says he's more nervous around Tom now than he was back then, because now he truly understands how famous he is. On set, Cruise treated him like a peer. They built a real connection, one that lasted long after filming. Cruise gave him advice, encouraged him, and even today keeps in touch. There was one moment on set that caused a bit of a stir. Jonathan had to repeat a swear word in a scene, a word his character was quoting from Jerry. Some people criticized his mom for allowing it, but she defended the choice. It wasn't Jonathan swearing on his own. He was acting. Still, it showed how much attention even a single line could get when it came from a little kid. What made Jonathan's performance so powerful wasn't just the cute lines or his funny glasses. It was the emotion. Ray Boyd wasn't just there for laughs. He brought heart to the story. As the child of a single mother, Ray's growing bond with Jerry mirrored the film's deeper message about connection and love. Without that emotional layer, the movie might have just been a typical romantic comedy about sports agents. But Ray made it something more. Critics and fans noticed. Director Cameron Crowe praised Jonathan for his natural instincts, saying some of the best moments weren't even in the script. They were just reactions Jonathan had in the moment. The way he connected with both Tom Cruise and Renee Zellweger gave the movie its warmth. That little boy, barely old enough to read a script, became the emotional center of the film. And he didn't even have to try too hard. He was just being himself. Jonathan Lipnicki was just 9 years old when he landed the role of George Little in Stuart Little. Most kids that age were playing outside or glued to cartoons, But Lipnicki was acting opposite a CGI mouse. He spent hours working with a blue screen, pretending to see and talk to something that wasn't there. It wasn't easy. The director chose him because of his ability to show real emotion, even when his co-star didn't actually exist. To make the bond feel real, Lipnicki even created stories in his head about George and Stuart's life together off-screen. He imagined their adventures, their inside jokes, their brotherly connection, and it worked. People watching the film didn't think twice. It felt real. And when Stuart Little made over $300 million, it was clear that Lipnicki wasn't just another cute kid. He was the real deal. The next year, he was in Scotland filming The Little Vampire. It sounds fun, but the shoot was brutal. Long days, freezing nights, and a lot of wire work to make the characters fly. Lipnicki did many of his own stunts, even when the weather dropped below 4 degrees Celsius. There was one scene where he had to film in cold rain, out in the Scottish countryside, for 3 nights in a row. But he never complained, not once. He kept showing up, giving the same energy every take. The movie didn't do great at the box office, but over time it found its audience. Looking back, Lipnicki called it one of the most important experiences of his young life. It taught him how to push through discomfort and stay focused when things got tough. But Lipnicki wasn't only on the big screen. Around the same time, he was making waves on television. After his big break in Jerry Maguire, he started showing up on TV shows and quickly became one of the highest-paid child actors. On The Jeff Foxworthy Show, he appeared in over 20 episodes. Then came Mego, where he earned $25,000 per episode. Huge money for a 7-year-old. The show didn't last long, but his contract guaranteed full payment. That meant he got the paycheck, even when the episodes didn't air in the US. He kept moving forward, popping up in a short arc on Dawson's Creek later on. Whether the shows were hits or not, Lipnicki kept proving he could handle anything. A rare trait in young actors. By 2002, he was more than just a familiar face. He was a box office force. His films had already earned a combined $750 million. That's a number that would impress any actor, let alone someone who hadn't even turned 12 yet. With hits like Jerry Maguire, Stuart Little, and Like Mike, Lipnicki was pulling in massive audiences. Studios loved him because he delivered results. His movies were profitable, his performances were consistent, and he had a charm that worked everywhere, from family comedies to heartfelt dramas. He reportedly earned $5 million for Stuart Little 2, which, at the time, made him one of the highest-paid child actors ever. While making Like Mike, he met someone who'd become a real friend, Bow Wow. The two were just kids with very different backgrounds, one from Hollywood, the other from hip-hop, but they clicked right away. On set, they bonded over basketball, music, and the strange pressure of being young celebrities. Between takes, they'd mess around, talk about the weirdness of fame, and practice hoop tricks. Bow Wow even brought Lipnicki to his recording sessions, pulling him into the music world. The friendship lasted beyond the movie, with Lipnicki showing up at concerts and the two staying in touch for years. They understood each other in a way few others could. Kids growing up under a spotlight, trying to figure it all out while the world watched. When Jonathan Lipnicki starred in Jerry Maguire, he was only 6. Audiences loved him. He was sweet, funny, and full of charm. But behind the camera, a very different story was beginning. As he got older, Jonathan started to struggle with something most people never saw. In middle school, he developed severe anxiety and depression. Every night before school, he would have panic attacks. He felt trapped, unsure how he would even survive the next day. The stress became so bad, he rubbed his hands together constantly until eczema broke out. At school, things were even worse. Kids bullied him every single day. They used cruel slurs and hateful words. Some called him a has-been and told him he'd never work again. It didn't matter that he was famous. In fact, it only made him more of a target. He would go home upset day after day, wondering why he was treated that way. Years later, some of those bullies added him on Facebook, completely unaware of how much damage they had done. And while he was being torn apart at school, Hollywood was changing too. As he grew up, the roles stopped coming. Casting directors who once smiled at him now looked at him with cold eyes. At 19, he walked into an audition where a producer looked him over and said, "You used to be cute." What happened? The man then mocked him for 10 straight minutes. Jonathan tried to joke to stay calm, but he left in tears. His own agent didn't believe him. Instead, he blamed Jonathan and told him the producer was right. That moment broke something in him. He fired the agent and later turned the pain into comedy, making a video called "You Used to Be Cute." Even though acting had once made him feel special, the rejection made him question everything. People kept comparing him to the child he used to be. They didn't care who he was becoming. Still, through all of this, Jonathan's family stood by him. His parents weren't stage parents. They were calm, grounded, and loving. He stayed in public school, played sports, and lived like a regular kid whenever he could. His mom always asked him if he still enjoyed acting, giving him the choice to stop if he wanted. That freedom meant everything. He stayed close to her over the years. Even as an adult, she helps him run lines and prepare for auditions. She's still in his corner, always. But none of it made the path easier. Around 2005, Jonathan seemed to vanish from Hollywood. He wasn't in big movies anymore. People thought he chose to step away. But the truth was simpler. He just stopped getting roles. He admitted it himself. "I didn't work because I just didn't work." The natural talent he had as a child faded as he grew older and the world got more complicated. Suddenly, acting wasn't easy. He had to relearn everything. During that time, he kept going to auditions. He tried to stay in the game, but again and again, people turned him away. Some were cruel about it. They didn't see potential. They only saw what he used to be. Still, Jonathan stayed grounded. He had made a choice early on to go to public school, not to hide behind fame. He went to Agora High School, like any other teen. He shared hallways with students who had no interest in Hollywood. It wasn't easy. The bullying didn't stop. He often had panic attacks just thinking about the next school day. But he never quit. He kept showing up. He never saw himself as a victim. He called himself a survivor. Now, he's not a boy anymore. He's a full-grown man with muscles, tattoos, and a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. His Instagram is filled with training photos, sweaty gym shots, and fight poses. Back in 2014, a side-by-side photo of him as a kid and as a ripped adult went viral. The caption read, "Puberty did this to him." It shocked a lot of people. It was hard to believe this serious-looking martial artist was the same kid from the movies. But this change didn't happen overnight. Jonathan's path into martial arts started when he was just 15. It wasn't random. His family actually owns an MMA company. They run amateur fights across California. That meant Jonathan grew up around fighters. He was offered a boxing lesson one day and just ran with it. In an interview, he said, "It's kind of a family deal." Even his mom trains jiu-jitsu. She earned a blue belt and even has a cauliflower ear to prove how serious she is. Being surrounded by that world made it easier for Jonathan to dive in, but it still took work. He trained every day, sometimes up to 7 days a week. Even while acting, he stayed committed. For 14 years, he pushed himself. And in 2020, he finally earned his black belt. He posted about it online, saying how much the training gave him confidence, even when he had to take breaks for films. He also entered competitions and won medals. On top of that, he's helped other fighters train, especially those in his own weight class. He wasn't just learning, he was part of the fight world. But martial arts didn't just change his body, it helped save his mind. Jonathan has been open about his struggles. After his early fame, he faced brutal bullying in school. He said he had panic attacks every night before class. His anxiety was so bad, he rubbed his hands together until he got eczema. Despite being a famous child actor, he felt worthless. Jiu-jitsu became his therapy. The discipline, the focus, the hard training, it gave him peace. It helped him rebuild his self-esteem. He said it made him the person he is today. For Jonathan, it wasn't about being tough or showing off, it was about healing. Of course, not everyone gets it. Online reactions have been all over the place. On Instagram, fans cheer him on. People say he's an inspiration. Some have followed his journey since he was a kid, and now feel like they're growing with him. But on other platforms like Facebook, the comments aren't always so kind. Some still see him as the little boy and can't take his transformation seriously. Others assume he's not really that good. Jonathan Lipnicki used to be known as the cute kid from Jerry Maguire. But by 2021, he had become something else entirely, a real-life protector. That year, tensions in the Middle East sparked a surge of anti-Semitic attacks in Los Angeles. For many, it was shocking. The violence wasn't subtle, it was out in the open. People were attacked in restaurants, on sidewalks, and outside synagogues just for being Jewish. Lipnicki didn't stay silent. He had trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 14 years and had earned a black belt. He teamed up with MMA fighter Remy Franklin, and the two started patrolling the Fairfax district. They wore white t-shirts and walked 5-hour shifts. They weren't police. They weren't looking for fights. But their presence sent a message. Jewish people weren't alone. What happened at a sushi restaurant helped light the fire. Pro-Palestinian men stormed in, shouting slurs and attacking diners. It wasn't the only case. Some Orthodox Jews walking to temple were shot with paintballs. One mother, Tova Zaidel, was with her 2 sons when someone in a black car opened fire with a paintball gun. Her son was hit. Lipnicki stepped in and began teaching the kids self-defense. They started calling the group Shabbat Angels, a nod to a Jewish tradition that 2 angels walk with you to and from synagogue. But these angels wore sneakers and had grappling skills. The patrols grew. Volunteers came in from boxing gyms and jiu-jitsu dojos. Jewish and non-Jewish fighters stood together. They helped people get to synagogue safely, especially on Saturdays, when Orthodox Jews don't carry phones and can't call for help. They also teamed up with Magen Am, a Jewish security group led by Rabbi Yossi Eilfort. He knew just how serious the situation had become. People tried to run over Jews with cars. Others drove by screaming threats. The volunteers couldn't stop every act of hate, but their presence made a difference. Franklin said it best. Being visible was the biggest deterrent. Bullies back down when someone's watching. For Lipnicki, this wasn't just about stepping up. It was personal. His grandfather survived Auschwitz. He called him the toughest man he'd ever known. That legacy mattered. Lipnicki already felt a strong connection to his Jewish roots. He had a Star of David tattoo and had gone on a birthright trip to Israel, which he called life-changing. But 2021 made it even more real. He said it brought him closer to GD. It gave his life a deeper meaning. In 2023, he admitted something most actors wouldn't dare say. He said, "I didn't work because I just didn't work. I didn't really get any roles for a while." That kind of honesty is rare, and it marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life. Instead of giving up, Jonathan made a plan. He knew if he wanted to act again, he had to earn it. After high school, he threw himself into acting classes. Not the kind you take for fun, but serious training with serious teachers. He didn't try to use his childhood fame as a shortcut. He studied theater and even worked as an understudy for Chris Pine, right after Pine starred in Star Trek. It was a humbling experience, but Jonathan was grateful for it. He wanted to learn the craft all over again, from the ground up. He also took a good, hard look at himself. In one interview, he said something that surprised a lot of people. "I wasn't a very good actor at one point," he confessed. That level of self-awareness is almost unheard of in Hollywood. He explained that as a child, acting came naturally. But as he got older, he started overthinking it. Instead of being himself, he tried copying his favorite actors. And that's when things started to fall apart. In another interview, he added, "I believe I lost touch with my identity. To act, you need to be in tune with yourself." He wasn't embarrassed to say he had lost that connection for a while. In fact, he saw that honesty as part of his growth. To get back in front of people, he took an unusual route, reality TV. He started small, showing up on Kathy Griffin, My Life on the D-List. Then, in 2018, he joined the British dating show Celebs Go Dating. He actually hit it off with one of the contestants, Becca Mason, and even flew her to Los Angeles to meet his family. The relationship didn't last, but viewers saw a different side of him, real, open, and vulnerable. A year later, he tried his hand at Worst Cooks in America, Celebrity Edition. He struggled in the kitchen and got eliminated early, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that he wasn't pretending to be anything he wasn't. People began to see him not as the kid from that movie, but as a grown man trying to find his place again. By 2023, all his hard work started to pay off. He landed a role in the comedy The Re-Education of Molly Singer. It wasn't a blockbuster, but it got good reviews and featured a strong cast. The movie had a fun, early 2000s vibe that matched the time when Jonathan was first famous. It was the perfect setting for him to show how far he had come. During the end credits, the film included bloopers that showed Jonathan relaxed and laughing with his co-stars. He looked right at home. Then, in 2025, he did something unexpected. He joined the cast of The Joe Schmo Show, a prank reality series where he played a fake version of himself, a ridiculous, over-the-top Hollywood jerk. The funny part, he actually had to audition to play himself, but the role gave him a chance to make fun of his own image and show he didn't take himself too seriously. He called the experience weirdly empowering because, as he put it, you want to be on your best behavior in this industry, and I got to be on my worst. Behind the scenes, the producers said Jonathan had always been their top choice. They thought it would be hilarious to have the kid from Jerry Maguire play the show's celebrity role, and they were right. Jonathan Lipnicki thought he had found something real. On a British reality show called Celebs Go Dating, he met Becca Mason. It started like a dream. Charming moments on camera, laughter, and a connection that felt authentic. He even flew her to Los Angeles to meet his family. That wasn't just for show. He was serious. But when Becca returned to the UK, everything changed. Without much explanation, she ended things. Just like that, it was over. The cameras stopped rolling, but the hurt lingered. For Jonathan, the timing couldn't have been worse. He was already trying to rebuild his life and career, and now he had to do it with a broken heart under a public spotlight. The truth is, Jonathan had been battling something deeper for years. Long before reality TV and adult relationships, anxiety and depression had taken hold of him. It started when he was still young, right after the early fame. Middle school became a nightmare. He was bullied every day. Kids called him names, mocked him, told him he was a washed-up child star. He was just trying to survive, but inside, he was falling apart. His hands were covered in eczema from rubbing them together out of nervousness. He had panic attacks every night before school. And it didn't stop there. Even interviews gave him anxiety. Every part of life felt like a fight. But Jonathan didn't give up. He got help. Therapy became a part of his life. It wasn't a quick fix. It never is. Some days were better than others, but he kept showing up. He kept trying. And while all this was happening behind the scenes, he never stopped caring about others. From a young age, he threw himself into charity work. At just 10 years old, he was recognized by the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation as a hero. Over the years, he supported causes like breast cancer research, children's hospitals, and animal welfare. He even joined the NBA's literacy campaign to help kids read. And when anti-Semitic attacks surged in 2021, he didn't just post online, he partnered with a security firm and personally helped escort Jewish people to their synagogues. That kind of action spoke louder than words.